The Rise of Skywalker novelization is out early, and there's a lot of interesting details about Palpatine's return and who exactly his son actually was. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Use your force powers to smash like on this video and let's talk some Star Wars. Now, a lot of this stuff has been trickling out ever since last weekend at C2E2, where Del Rey was selling early copies of the Rise of Skywalker novelization. And to be honest, I was a little bit reluctant to cover any of this stuff because I was like, I don't have the full book. I'm not getting the full context, and it's hard to take little different passages and excerpts and then spin out and make all of these conclusions. However, a lot of these different passages have been coming up, and there's plenty of information that we can legitimately talk about. And so I want to go over all the new interesting details about Palpatine's return, his son, and then we'll speculate about what all this means and where Star Wars fans are at with all of this. So number one, and you have likely seen this by now, but yes, it is confirmed that the Palpatine we see in The Rise of Skywalker is a cloned body and one that is sort of falling apart, but it does indeed have the spirit of the real Palpatine from the Battle of Endor. And this is explained in a couple of different places. First of all, when Kylo first meets Palpatine, he can sense that it is the real spirit of Palpatine. 1000% it is actually Palpatine. However, he makes mention of noticing that the device used to keep Palpatine alive, he has seen before, and it is used during cloning. And so he can tell that this body is falling apart. It is a cloned body that cannot handle the power of Palpatine, but it is the real Palpatine. And later on in the book, we actually get a full explanation as to how Palpatine actually survived the Battle of Endor, being thrown down that shaft on the second Death Star. This all happens when Rey confronts Palpatine, and due to her sharing blood with him, she's able to actually see one of his memories. And she sees, from Palpatine's perspective, what it was like to be betrayed on the second Death Star. He's flying down the pit, and he looks up and he sees Vader looming over the pit and feels nothing but betrayal. He mentions that Vader had killed him in the same way that he had killed his old master, Darth Plagueis. He also mentions that Darth Plagueis was unable to actually preserve his own life using the Sith techniques that he had to extend life and be immortal. Plagueis just simply hadn't acted quickly enough. But Darth Sidious, sensing the light side flickering in Darth Vader, had actually been planning and had been ready for this for a long time. And so as he is falling down that shaft, Palpatine calls upon all of the power of the dark side and sends his consciousness out to a station very far away, which we can assume is on Exegol, and he enters a cloned body. However, Palpatine mentions right away that this cloned body was imperfect, unable to fully hold all of the dark side power that he had, and he was going to be trapped in this dying, corrupted body. And he makes mention of maybe Plagueis did have the last laugh after all. He talks about how the Sith cultists had been working on different clones and different bodies for a long time. They did great work, but were unable to create the perfect vessel for Palpatine, but at least he was still going to be alive. Now, last thing we got to talk about, and that is Rey's father, aka Palpatine's son. And this is where it just gets weird as all get out, because apparently that person is actually not the biological son of Palpatine, but rather a perfect clone that was created by the Sith cultist, and it was a perfect representation of Palpatine except for the fact that it didn't have any force sensitivity. And so it's a copy of Palpatine, but one that's unable to use the force. And so technically Rey is not the granddaughter of Palpatine. She is actually more like the son or the daughter of Palpatine, or the daughter of a failed Palpatine clone. Okay, now all of this is freaking crazy as hell. I get why fans are like, wow, this is really bizarre. Why is all of this information in a novel and was not given to us in the film? And in general, I always tell people that like the novelizations are great because they give you way more context. I mean, you're spending like 11 to 15, sometimes 20 hours reading one of these books, and you've got a couple of hours, 3 at the most, in a movie. And so there's obviously always going to be way more stuff in the novelizations. But I can't argue with people that are saying this is way too much. This changes almost everything, and it was in a novel. It wasn't in the movie. Like, ultimately, a lot of people were like, how did Palpatine come back? That makes zero sense. I'd really like to know that. And the explanation in the novel, to me, makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, We know that he had Plagueis as a master. We know that Plagueis had literally cheated death. He had the power to literally extend his life. He could save others from death, but he couldn't save himself from death, at least not in that moment when Palpatine killed him in his sleep. Also, if you've been reading Palpatine in other novels, or you've been seeing him in things like Clone Wars or Rebels, you just know how powerful Palpatine is. It completely makes sense that he would be able to preserve his life past death, and the fact that he did it in a passage that explains he was thinking of Plagueis, knew that Plagueis didn't have the ability to do this, but he did because he stole Plagueis' information. It lines up with everything in canon, makes total and perfect sense to me, and yeah, it probably would have been good to see that in the film. And as far as Rey's father is concerned, that is so bizarre, and it changes everything. Again, she's technically not the granddaughter of Palpatine. She is technically the daughter of a failed Palpatine clone. That is way different than actually being his granddaughter, and all of those people that were bothered by this, that thought that was ridiculous and were trying to like do the math. When did Palpatine have sex? Who was the mother? Who was the mother of Rey? And all these different things. Like, they're sitting there trying to scratch their heads and figure this out. And at the end of the day, this explanation is way better, makes more sense, and it's also just weirder, right? I mean, look, Rey being attached to Palpatine, totally get it. Totally get it. It was an interesting move for them to make. I know a lot of people did not like that, but I think in general, just having her be called the granddaughter of Palpatine, having Palpatine refer to her as granddaughter, all of this stuff really hit people in a weird way, and none of it was necessary. Palpatine could have just said that you're the vessel, that you have this bloodline, and at the end of the day, I still don't exactly know what Palpatine's plan was in the movie. Like, the novel's really hinting that Rey was this perfect vessel that he wanted, but then why did he want Kylo to kill Rey? I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. And the thing that's really crazy is I'm one of the people that really likes the movie. I really like it, and I think I'm gonna find a lot to love in this novelization, and I hope it fully explains things. But for now, all of this new information is just confusing people even more, and that is just the state we are in right now with Star Wars. Like, I'm hoping that in the novelization they dig into the rules. They talk about how it is that you can't just clone Force users. How could you make a perfect clone of Palpatine that didn't have the power of the Force? How does all of that actually work together? Because that's interesting stuff. That's stuff that fans would love to speculate about, make theories about, bring into whatever happens next in Star Wars. But instead, I kind of get the feeling that it's all just going to be swept under the rug, that they're not fully going to explain anything, and they're just kind of taking from one of the EU storylines, and that would be Dark Empire, and they're not fully explaining anything. So if I had to just run through all these updates again and talk about what I liked and then what I didn't like, I mean, I love the explanation of him actually sending his consciousness out from the Death Star to Exegol. I love the fact that the Sith cultists were constantly working on trying to create a new clone for him, that Palpatine knew that he could potentially die, and that he needed another route to immortality. I love that that could tie in to the contingency plan that he was working on. I like that. I like that explanation. The fact that it mentions Plagueis and all of that, it works for me. But I'm not crazy about Palpatine's son and this clone that was a perfect clone of him that didn't have Force powers. And I'm also not crazy about how the film just refers to Rey as his granddaughter, but he's not actually his granddaughter. Like, that is, I'm not really down with. So the other explanation, the Plagueis stuff, how he survived, beautiful. I love it, makes sense, and I kind of always knew that was going to be the way that it was. But the stuff with her father, why would Palpatine even keep a clone that didn't have the Force? If he looked down on this clone so much, why would he keep it around? I don't understand. I don't understand. And then how does that clone then leave and have a union and then have a child, and that child is Rey? And how does Rey have Force sensitivity that's very powerful if her father didn't? A lot of that stuff not making sense to me. Again, It could be further explained in the novel, and when I get my hands on the full novel, I'll deep dive on it, and then I'll bring that information to you guys. But that's kind of where I am at with all of this. I'm really curious. What do you think about this? Does this new information help you accept Palpatine's return a little bit better in the film? Does it make you believe that Rise of Skywalker does not actually tarnish Anakin's legacy, or are you on the opposite side of that? Are you thinking this is crazy? This just is all this retconning. It's very sloppy. I'm very mad at Lucasfilm still, and this actually makes me hate Rise of Skywalker even more. Wherever you are at with this, let me know in the comments section below. And folks, I want to remind you, if you want a chance to win an Infinity Gauntlet or some Den of Nerds merch, you've got to go over and participate in our Battle Bracket 2020. This is a tournament we are holding between different villains and heroes from different fandoms. Fans will vote on the fights each day to decide who wins, and you can literally go fill out a bracket on who you think will win and become the ultimate champion of Battle Bracket. And if you are the person that hands in a perfect bracket, or one of the people that hands in a perfect bracket, you have a chance to win the Infinity Gauntlet. And we'll also be giving out a bunch of merch to other people that participate in the tournament. So go to the link in the description and fill out your bracket today. And now I want to shout out Space Solomang. Indeed, Darth Tenebris was a Bith in Legends. So shout out to you, Space Solomang. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know, how did Rey repair the split kyber crystal? This is another thing that comes out of the novelization, and I want to know, how did Rey repair the split kyber crystal from The Last Jedi? As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching this video. The Den of Nerds is independent media. If you want to support us, you can do something as simple as liking or sharing this video. If you want to financially support us, you can join the list of names you see below and become a supporter of us on Patreon. We also do live streams all week, Monday through Friday, over on our live streaming channel. Support independent media. Support the Den of Nerds.